Hi, hello everyone, hello English readers. Welcome to this new week of live read-along of Mrs Dalloway by Virginia Woolf, or the adaptation of Mrs Dalloway. I'm Lydie and I am an English teacher in France, and I am also the founder of Lydie's Book Club, in which I host live readings of adaptations of classics of English literature, or adaptations of contemporary novels, and like this one. Well, that's a classic of English, considered as a classic of English literature. And I tend to prioritize novels that are written by women. And in this book club, I host once a week a live meeting on Zoom with the members of the book club in order to discuss the chapters read over the week, and also talk about books in general, or talk about learning English as well as a second language. Yeah. So today we are starting our second week of reading Mrs. Dalloway. If you have missed the previous live readings, or the replay, then I invite you to watch the replays on YouTube. So if you're already on YouTube, then if you're watching this on replay, then you can watch all the live readings, all the previous live readings on YouTube. So today we're reading section 6 of the novel, which is basically page 48 to 53. And if you want to know more about Virginia Woolf and her novel Mrs. Dalloway, then I invite you to listen to my podcast called my podcast Reading English. And the podcast episode is episode number 17. It's called An Introduction to Virginia Woolf and Mrs. Dalloway. If you don't know the novel, you don't know anything about it, then it's going to be a good start for you to get to know Virginia Woolf, this amazing author, and also discover what the novel Mrs. Dalloway is about. And the podcast is going to be available this Thursday. I recorded it live 2 weeks ago now, and the replay will be available this Thursday, so very soon then. Well, so that's it. I'm going to now do a quick recap of the section 5, which was read last Friday. So just to refresh our minds and recap a little bit. And I'm going to say hi to Katie. Hi, welcome tonight. I hope you had a good week, a good start of the week, a good day. I meant. I hope you had a good day. Okay, so on Friday we left off with this section 5. So as I explained previously, the book is not divided in chapters. Basically, it's just the story of 3 main characters, everything happening in one day. And hi, thank you. I had a good day. Great. So it's all happening in one day. So there are no real chapters. It's all written all at once. in one block. So the adaptation, the publisher, Penguin Readers, adapted the novel in let's say different sections. So you can see that there is a sorry, I was finishing eating my little nuts before starting the live, so I have stuck on. Sorry. So you have little long dashes, long line here to separate the different parts of the novel and the different stories, I would say. Hi, hello Etienne, welcome. So that's why I call them sections instead of pages. It helps a little bit to know where we are more or less, and that's why I add also the pages next to it. So section 5, we talked about so this section is very much focused on Rezia Warren Smith, who is the wife of Septimus Warren Smith. So I remind you a little bit. So Septimus Warren Smith is the war veteran who fought during the First World War, and the story is happening in 1923. So 5 years after the end of the First World War, and this man has come back from the war damaged, basically. So is physically damaged, not really. I think he's physically is okay, but mentally he's completely damaged. His friend Evans has died during the war, and he was with him also fighting, and he is very affected. He's been very affected by this loss, and he is constantly speaking to him, and he sees him all the time. So the husband that came back from the war is definitely not the same man as she knew him. So now Rezia is living with a completely different man, and she doesn't recognize her husband anymore. So it's very disturbing for her. She's very confused, and also she feels very lonely, not being able to talk about her husband's mental illness to her family and her friends. And it seems like the doctors that are treating her husband are not very helpful, not very are not really understanding her husband's condition. So she's having a very hard time. She's missing, she's from Italy originally, and she's missing her family. Her sister, her sister is a hat seller. She owns a hat store, and she's living in Milan, and she misses her sister very dearly, and her family as well, her life in Italy, and she hates London. And now her husband is not himself anymore, and it's even harder for her to keep living in London as well. Hi, Melissa. Hello. So, yeah, that's very hard for her. And she is, in this part of the book, she is questioning her whole life choices, and she wonders why did I get married? Why did I choose to move away from my family and my friends, and to live in this city that I hate, and this husband that is not himself anymore? And she has to go through this, and she doesn't understand him because he is in his own world. He's in his own head, and he's also talking about killing himself. So yeah, it's a very it's a lot for her to manage, to handle. So it's that, yeah. So that's about Rhea Warren Smith's situation with her husband. And now we're going to start reading section 6. Okay, I'm going to drink a little bit before getting started. Okay, let's go. And that is being young, Peter Walsh thought as he passed them. So yeah. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that Rhea, at the time of the story. So yeah, so basically Rhea, because I remind you, everything is happening in one day. So Rhea and her husband are in Regent's Park, sitting on the bench, and at the same time, Peter Walsh, who is, I remind you, Clarissa's old friend. So Clarissa is also one of the main characters. So it's basically Clarissa, Septimus, Warren Smith, and Peter Walsh, who are the main characters. And you learn also about the other people around them. So like Rhea, and you learn also about Richard, Clarissa's husband. We learn a little bit about him, but there is no section dedicated to him so far. So now it seems to be about Peter Walsh. Okay, so Clarissa's old friend, and he went to, so he lives in India, and he came back to get a divorce in London, and he visited his friend Clarissa, and now he left her house. So it was in the morning, and now he is in Regent's Park at the same time as Rhea and Septimus. So he saw them. I just saw them. I'm sorry. Okay, so and Rhea and Septimus are in their early 30s. So Septimus is 30 years old, and Riza is a little bit younger than him. So that's why Peter Walsh is saying, and that is being young. Peter Walsh thought as he passed them. To have an awful scene in the middle of the morning. Oh, because, yeah, probably I forgot, but Rhea and Septimus were having an argument. So he saw them. And that is being young, Peter Walsh thought as he passed them. To have an awful scene in the middle of the morning. The poor girl looked very upset. But what was it about? He wondered. What had the young man been saying to make her look like that? What awful quarrel had they had to both look so unhappy on a fine summer morning? The fascinating thing about coming back to England after 5 years was the way it made one notice things as if one had never seen them before, like those lovers quarreling under a tree. He had never seen London look so beautiful. The softness, the richness, the greenness, he thought after India. And here, of course, one fell in love with every woman one met. One here is used very often. One meet is someone. Yeah. It's, I would say, an old-fashioned way or very formal way to say someone. There was a freshness about them, and all of them, even the poorest, were better dressed than 5 years ago, surely. And every woman now, even the finest, wore makeup and put it on in public. And young women would marry when it suited them. They would marry some rich man and live in a huge house near Manchester. Now, who was it? Who had done that? Peter asked himself. Walking across the grass, somebody who had written him a long letter quite recently, who had been thinking of him and the old days. It was Sally Seton, of course, wild, romantic Sally, the last person in the world one would have expected to marry a rich man and live in a huge house near Manchester. Remember, Sally Seton is was Clarissa's good friend, and she is the one that kissed her when they were at Burton in Clarissa's childhood house. So they were very close friends. And now she's married to a rich man and lives in Manchester. But of all Clarissa's circle, Sally was probably the best. At least she was not fooled by a man like Hugh Whitbread, who was the greatest snob and who had the most stupid admiration for the British upper class of any human being Peter had ever met. Hugh was like a top-class servant, somebody who walked behind his employers carrying luggage, who could be trusted to send telegrams or to write letters for hostesses. He had some silly little jobs now. Looking after the king's wine or cleaning royal buttons. And who are the Whitbreads? He could hear Sally saying, they sell coal. Hugh thought of nothing but his own appearance and stood for everything worse in British middle-class life, she said. Oh, but he was such a dear. So unselfish, giving up his own pleasure to help his old mother, Clarissa would say. And now, Peter thought, if he married Daisy and brought her to England, he would need Hugh Whitbread or Richard Dalloway to help get him a job with a good salary. He didn't mind asking Dalloway, who was a straightforward, sensible kind of man, not brilliant and without a spark or of imagination, but a good man. He ought to have been a country gentleman. He was wasted in politics. How good he had been when Clarissa's dog injured its leg so badly. Dalloway took care of it all, comforting Clarissa and all the time talking to the dog as if it were a human being. He remembered walking with Sally in the garden at Burton with its bushes and giant cauliflowers, and Sally begging him, half laughing, of course, to carry off Clarissa. He must save her from the Hugh Whitbreads and the Richard Dalloways and all the other perfect gentlemen who would take away her spark and make a hostess of her. So Peter Walsh is giving himself a mission to save Clarissa from this life. But one must be fair to Clarissa. She had a perfectly clear idea of what she wanted. Her emotions were all on the surface. Beneath, she was a far better judge of character than Sally, for example, and she had, too, that extraordinary woman's gift of making a world of her own, wherever she was. In a room full of people, it was Clarissa, one remembered. Not that she was beautiful or said anything special, or said anything especially clever, but there she was. No. He was not in love with her anymore. He only felt unable to get away from the thought of her. After seeing her that morning, which was not being in love, of course, it was simply thinking of her, criticizing her, trying again to explain her after 30 years. The obvious thing to say about her was she cared too much for her position in society. She had admitted it to him and told him that she hated people who didn't try, failures like himself, he supposed. So here it's quite interesting, the inner discussion that Peter Walsh has. So the discussion that Peter Walsh has with himself, with the fact that he's trying to convince himself that he's not in love with her anymore. She thought that people must do something, be something. She once said that the older she became, the more she admired the courage of a woman like Lady Bexborough, who held herself upright. Clarissa did that herself, being as straight as an arrow, a little stiff, in fact. In all of this, she was guided by Dalloway, of course. She had to see things through her husband's eyes. These parties, for example, were all for him. She made her drawing room a sort of meeting place. She had a gift for it, visiting, being kind to people, running about with bunches of flowers, but she did it sincerely. Since the whole of life is a bad joke, she used to say, let us at least do what we can to reduce the suffering of others and be as good as we possibly can. It was immediately after Sylvia's death, that terrible tragedy, that she developed these ideas. To see your own sister killed by a falling tree, which was all the fault of her father's carelessness, was enough to make one bitter, Clarissa always said. Instead, she developed this belief in doing good for the sake of goodness. So here we learned that Clarissa's sister died from a falling tree, under a tree, basically. Yeah, it's pretty sad, so tragic, and such a silly way to die in a way. It's so unfortunate. And so we understand here why Clarissa's character and her positive attitude towards life. And of course, she enjoyed life enormously. If you walked with her in a park, she would notice the flowers, a baby in a pram, the young couples. She would probably have talked to those lovers if she had thought them unhappy. But she always needed people, and as a result, she wasted her time always giving parties, talking nonsense. So here we have a sense that the fact that Clarissa is always giving parties is maybe to find meaning to her life as well. And also the fact that probably she needs to be surrounded by people, because in a way she might feel lonely in her house, in her beautiful house in Westminster. There was a reward to getting old, Peter Walsh thought, coming out of Regent's Park. While emotions remain as strong as ever, one has gained at last the ability to hold experience up to the light and turn it round slowly to examine it. Now, at the age of 53, he hardly needed people anymore. For hours at a time, he prayed that one could say these things without them being known. For hours and days, he never thought of Daisy. So was he really in love? The truth was that she was in love with him. And when the ship actually sailed from India, he felt an extraordinary relief at being alone. If they were honest, Peter Walsh thought everyone would say that one doesn't want people after 50. Okay, so that's quite interesting here, because we learn that he might not be in love with that person, with that Daisy, that he declared to Clarissa that he was in love. That's quite interesting, the change of thinking here, change of feelings. But what about these extraordinary states of emotion? Crying this morning, Clarissa probably thought him a fool, not for the first time. It was jealousy that was at the bottom of it. Jealousy which lasts longer than every other emotion. Peter Walsh thought, taking out his knife. In her last letter, Daisy mentioned another man, even knowing that she said it on purpose to make him jealous, made no difference to his wild jealousy. Coming to England and seeing lawyers wasn't because he wanted to marry her, but to prevent her marrying anybody else. That was what had come over him when he saw Clarissa so calm, so cold, sewing a dress. That was what she could have said. That was what she could have said. Sorry, that was what she could have saved him from. She had turned him into a tearful old fool. But women don't know what love is, he thought, shutting his knife. Clarissa was as cold as ice. She would sit there on the sofa by his side, let him take her hand, give him one kiss. Here he was at the street crossing. Oh, here he was at the street crossings. That's the narrator. A sound interrupted him. A weak, thin, trembling sound coming from just opposite Regent's Park Tube Station. An ageless, sexless voice with no beginning or end, and an absence of all human meaning, singing. Oh, far, so for sweet to me. The beaten, bent old woman with one hand held out for coins, the other holding her side, stood singing of love. She sang of a love which has lasted 10 million years. Of once walking in May with a man who had loved her. Give me your hand, she said, for Peter Walsh couldn't help giving the poor creature a coin as he stepped into his taxi. And if someone sees, what do they matter? A trembling voice demanded. That's strange. And if someone sees, what do they matter? And that's the end of section 5. Oh, wait. Oh, wait. There is a little section 6. Sorry, I was at section 6. And now it's section 7. So there is a little... What have I done? 53. Oh, wait. So it's... have I divided this properly? Yes. It's just that I didn't put the right number. Okay, so it's still a good section anyway. Okay. So that's the end of section 6. And yeah, I'll be interested to know what you think about that part. About Peter Walsh, remembering about Sally Seton and reflecting on her new life, and Kitty's saying, if Clarissa had married Peter, would she do more meaningful things? I do not think so. Well, Kitty, that's a good question. Would she? Would she be a different woman, a different wife? Never know. But it's interesting to reflect on that, because I don't know, I'm not married, but we might wonder sometimes, oh, what if I had married this person? What would be my life? Yeah, that reminds me of my parents. And there was this, especially my mom, there was this a man who proposed to her, I think, and he was a um, a jewelry shopkeeper, and he was nice, but my mom wasn't interested in him that much, and I think he proposed or something, and she rejected him, and she married my dad instead, a couple years later. Um, but sometimes with my family and my aunties and stuff, we remember this. She remembers this moment, and oh, can you imagine if you had married this man? You maybe would be covered in jewelries, or we're laughing about this. Um, but it happened to us sometimes to wonder what our life would have been if we had made this choice instead of this one, you know, uh, without necessarily regretting our choices. Sometimes maybe, but not necessarily with regrets, in intention, without intentionally regretting our present situation. But um it's just a thought. And what would be my life if it's kind of just imagining uh another self. And here Peter is actually convincing himself that he's not in love with her, but in a way he realizes that he's not that much in love with Daisy as he thought he was. But I guess the fact of seeing Clarissa again put all those feelings back up and back to the surface. And probably that's why he's feeling emotional also, and why he's questioning. And that's probably why he is questioning now his choice of divorcing his actual wife. For what reason? Is it really because he wants to marry Daisy, or just because he wants to just be free? So yeah. But for you, Kitty, for you, it's clear that she would do the same as she does with Richard. I don't know. She would have probably, maybe she might, she would have been maybe the same, because as we learned that it's something that comes back. I mean, her way of filling her days and hosting all those parties are very much related to the death of her sister. I don't know. I think when we start living with someone, or we're marrying someone, we indirectly are influenced by that person, and our behavior then evolves and we change. So that's a good question. I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe she would have been a different wife. I don't know. That's a good question. A good question to reflect on, I would say. But also it's interesting to reflect on Peter's character, and uh and see and understand that actually he's not very sure about himself. He doesn't really know, or he's not being honest with his true feelings. That's what this part of the book is telling me here, you see? So yeah, I let you reflect and think again about this part of the book. I hope that you enjoyed the reading, and make sure that you subscribe, you join the book club if you want to be part of this literary journey and improve your English and be part of this community. All the links are in my Instagram bio, and on YouTube all the links are in the about section. So I wish you a beautiful evening, and I see you tomorrow to read you the section 7 of the book, and have a beautiful evening. Bye.